On today's show, why is this year's 2024 NBA draft being widely regarded as a weaker draft class? Some of the top prospect names to be on the lookout for. How much should NCAA play during March Madness impact a draft prospect's stock, either positively or negatively? Why the GLeague Ignite failed as a developmental program for so many prospects, and Bronny James throwing his name into the draft ring. It's all coming up on today's Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more players' stats and watch the winnings roll in. Prize Picks is really simple to play. You can make your picks and submit an entry in less than 60 seconds. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of different players and stat types are what makes Prize Picks the #1 fantasy sports app on the market. And it's not too late to get in on the action. The NBA playoffs are right around the corner, and you can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during the basketball postseason. So if you've been thinking about getting into daily fantasy sports, you've got to give Prize Picks a chance. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go grab the app today, use code LOCKEDONNBA, and get a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Joining us now is the host of Locked On NBA, a big board, Richard Stayman, who could track down wherever you listen to your podcast and on YouTube. Just search Locked On NBA Big Board. And Richard, it's that time of year. The draft talk is really starting to heat up. I know you have us covered all year round with draft content over at Locked On NBA Big Board, but now is when more eyes start turning towards the draft as the NBA season is winding down. We've got the NBA Draft Lottery right around the corner later on in May. But right now, all this talk coming into the 2024 draft, I feel like, is that this draft class is a weak class. So I want your thoughts from the jump. Why is that, right? Is it lack of star upside at the top? Is it lack of depth? Why are people so down on this year's draft class?
Yeah, this is probably the worst draft class since 2013. It's the first year we really see the COVID development stunt, where, back in 2020, a lot of kids didn't get time to go to the gym. They missed out when the world shut down. And this is the first class that it really affects, and it affects them the most because they were in that prime area, prime element where they needed to be in the gym, needed to be, just getting as many reps up, and they couldn't. So now we're seeing the effects of it. And on top of that, just kind of putting it, tangibly, there's just no star power in this draft. Compared to other drafts, you don't have that franchise changer, and that's always going to change the perception. And it's a wild card. You ask 2 GMs, they're not going to give you the same answers of who their #1 player is.
So let's tackle some of those names, likely to go near the top of this year's draft. So there is no consensus #1 guy, right? Let's clear that up right now.
Correct.
Okay, so of the names likely to go near the top of this draft, let's start with let's visit your big board here momentarily. Give us kind of the top 5 names that you have on your board right now.
Yeah, so mine, Alex Sarr, he's over in Australia right now from France. Ron Holland, he played with GLeague Ignite. Nikola Topic, he plays over in Europe. Reed Sheppard at Kentucky, and Donovan Clingan in Connecticut, and he's in the championship game.
Yeah, so Sarr is a guy that I am very excited by, if only because the Rockets do hold that the pick via the Brooklyn Nets. So if that could jump into the top 4, that would be incredible. But I digress. Let's kind of give me the elevator pitch for a couple of these guys and what teams might be getting themselves into if their team, Pistons, Wizards, Hornets, whoever would be looking at making a selection at the top of this year's draft.
Yeah, so I would say with Alex Sarr, with him, you're getting an all-around center. He's probably the best chance if you're going to try and find who that real center is that can do every single thing. It's Alex Sarr. I think he's the best chance. He has a growing 3-point shot. He's very athletic, can defend multiple positions, still needs to refine some consistency. Had some rebounding woes over in Australia, but overall, you're getting an all-around big upside play. And then moving to, if you want me just to pack them all in
Yeah,
real
just
fast.
no, just
Cool.
pack
Listen,
them
sure.
together.
So,
We'll go down your top 5 here really quick, because again, I think this is a
sure.
nice little preliminary visit into the draft for people who haven't had a chance to take a look at it yet.
Yeah, so then you go to Ron Holland, who he's somebody that's had a lot of hype around him, and for good reason, since his probably sophomore year. I saw him play in the U16s a few years ago. He was dominant there. I want to say he was the MVP. He's very athletic, 6'6", 6'7", all-around wing, but the jump shot wasn't there like scouts wanted it to be. He had a poor three-point percentage, under 30%. Free throw percentage was good, but he just wasn't able to shoot. His injury caused him to miss the rest of the season. People don't know what to make of him because the GLeague Ignite, they only won 2 games this year. So hard to make it out with him. Nikola Topic is a tall guard. Jump shot has some iffy concerns, but statistically everything checks out. He also has great touch with both hands at the rim, but he's not that explosive, and we don't know how much of that's going to translate. He's kind of a question mark at this point. Reed Sheppard is one of the most unique players. He is a top tier shooter. He shot over 50% from 3 on very real volume in college. He also averaged over 2.5 steals and over half a block, which is just ridiculous for a guard. But somehow he projects not to be a great defensive guard because he can get burned on ball. So a little bit of concerns there. And then Donovan Clingan's a center. He doesn't shoot. He has some mobility concerns, but I think that's been a little bit answered in the NCAA tournament because with health, we've seen his mobility be good or bad, but he is absolutely dominant in the paint. He deters everything, and he finishes everything on the offensive end.
Plus, Reed Sheppard, he's a Kentucky guard, and we know that Kentucky's got a great track record with guards. So gotta include that little tidbit in there. Now, I want to follow up with you about March Madness, the NCAA tournament here in just a second. But quickly, your thoughts on the GLeague Ignite, right? They decided to close down the GLeague Ignite, get rid of the team. Is that kind of an indictment on that whole venture by the NBA to have that, that team to showcase the young talent, to have that be a developmental route? And when you start to look at some of the prospects who did opt to go that route rather than playing, say, overseas or playing in college, do you maybe look at those players and think differently about them? Like, man, how could this player have looked different, in his first couple of years in the NBA if he had gone through a different program instead of going to the GLeague Ignite?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's several guys you can look back on and say they should have gone to college, especially this year. I think this year is probably the most glaring example. But the thing that went wrong with the Ignite was really they just didn't surround their young players well. They did a good job of developing them as professionals, and that was their main objective. But they also forgot some elements of developing them as players. For example, with this year, it was a team full of front court players. The problem is they had one prospect who was a point guard, but he missed a good amount of the season. He's not that polished. And then everyone else was kind of a washed point guard. They weren't that good even for the G League. So you didn't give them much of a point guard. These are guys that need a point guard to set them up. How are they supposed to be set up for success? So just with the past, I think there are guys, Jalen Green, for example, with the Rockets, he could have gotten more just successful reps, I think, going somewhere else. But the Ignite eventually did their job. They got NIL involved and they got competition to make, just the entire playing field more even.
Okay. Well, shifting gears here back to NCAA talk and just kind of the March Madness tournament we're going through right now. Got the championship round right around the corner. But when you look at the way certain guys kind of play through March Madness, how much does March Madness impact like the stock of certain prospects going into a draft, either positively or negatively, or how much should it impact their stock, I should say?
Yeah, so it depends who you ask. If you ask a GM, it actually matters a lot. So these GMs haven't had time to watch the NCAA, think about a lot of their season until mid-February, but probably centered around the trade deadline. What are they going to do with their team? So that gives them most of the season they're preoccupied. They probably don't care that much by February for most teams. They might have gone to a game or two, but they don't know everybody. When you get 64, 68 teams now in the tournament, you're opening your eyes, and it gives you a very small sample size. If you have a bad game, it's an unfair judgment, but it does impact your stock. Vice versa too. Like if you have a great game, you're nobody and you suddenly pop off like the kid from Oakland. He's probably going to play in Summer League now because of that, which he never would have. Even if they had lost, I don't think he gets there. Them beating Kentucky does that. And it depends on each player, right? Reed Sheppard might have even seen his stock fall because they lost to Oakland.
Do you have a recent example of a player who is currently, in the NBA, just got drafted recently, like, last year or two, whose stock did either rise or plummet based on their tournament play?
Well, the best example I would say ever is Dante DiVincenzo. He was an afterthought of a prospect. Rose out, and this is all in 2018 when Villanova won the tournament. Dante DiVincenzo, I know you asked for a year, but I went
No,
a little bit.
that's perfect. No, let's do it. Yeah, that's great.
He was kind of just that like later option on the team. Everybody knew Jalen Brunson, but Mikal Bridges, but nobody really thought too much about Dante DiVincenzo. And then he started rising more as the tournament went on and teams were paying attention. And he went to the first round, which was just, if you had asked even in February, where would he get drafted? People were like, undrafted? What? Like, that's not going to happen. And so he went from undrafted to really that high.
Name with a lot of buzz surrounding him, and rightfully so. Bronny James declared for the 2024 draft, but also entered the NCAA transfer portal. So he's maintaining his draft eligibility, his flexibility to go back to college play. Do you expect him to actually come out this year? And if so, how high could you even envision him going in a draft right now?
Yeah, it's a really tough read. I think if you put him as an anonymous prospect who just comes from an average American family, we're not talking about him. So it's a little bit tough. He has definitely benefited from who his dad is. I think ultimately he has to come out. The next 3 draft classes look to be ridiculously deep and much stronger at the top. It's going to be harder to get drafted. Also, there's the whole, who knows if you get LeBron element, and that's automatically going to keep his stock up, because if you think of them as a package, it drastically changes how you view him. If you were to spend the 28th pick for a chance at LeBron James, I think almost every NBA team would do that, especially how good he is now. Like he's still not washed, which is just ridiculous to even say in year 21 or 22, whatever he's in now.
I'm very curious to see if there's going to be some kind of a bidding war, right, where you're seeing different teams, different contenders, right, maybe hiding there at the end of the first round, like, hey, we'll throw a 25th, 26th overall pick at Bronny James if it means we can maybe lure LeBron over to our franchise for but I fully expect whatever year, if that does happen, LeBron's getting a farewell tour, man. Like, he's going to do the farewell tour with his son, and that's going to be the move. It's not going to be to go to a contender.
Yeah, and also, though, I mean, how often has this worked? The Mavs tried getting Giannis by taking Kostas. That didn't work. We've seen it plenty of times just completely not work. I mean, teams took DeMarcus Cousins' brother, not in the draft, but signed him. Like, doesn't always mean anything. LeBron's a notorious liar. He could just be saying it all for show.
All right, last thing I got for you here, Richard. We got to do this. We got to hit the tankathon spin at least once with you here on the show. So I'm going to spin the wheel. I'm going to give you just the top 3 teams, though. So I'll give you the top 3 teams, and I'll let you make their draft selections. You get to be in the GM chair and tell us who you would pick for each of these organizations. So right now, the Pistons, the Wizards, and the Charlotte Hornets have the best 3 odds right now at the top of the lottery. So we're going to hit the spin, and we get... Ooh, this is a weird one. All right. The Utah Jazz jumped all the way to the top. So Utah gets the number 1 overall pick. The Hornets get the number 2 overall pick. And Washington drops a spot down to number 3. So in that order, Jazz, Hornets, Wizards, who are you taking?
I'm still in the camp that Utah needs more depth for rim protectors. And just for that, they're going to take my number 1 player, which is Alex Sarr. The Hornets, I'm not really going for need. I think they're another team that could have used Alex Sarr, even though they have Mark Williams. I'm going to just keep going down the board. Ron Holland, I think they need an upside swing in the best possible way. And then you said the Wizards, right?
Yes, Wizards 3rd.
So I have an unpopular, I don't know how unpopular this is, but I think they should be building with this draft. You're not getting that franchise changer. Get somebody who's going to complement the top of the draft next year. And there are 3 or 4 guys that really could be at that top of the draft that change your franchise. Get the complementary piece. Go take Reed Sheppard. Yeah, he doesn't fix most of what you're looking to fix, but he's going to complement whoever they get. Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey, does not matter. He's going to play so well next to a franchise-changing star. Get that secondary piece out of the way so you don't have to worry about it, and then you get your franchise changer next year.
How will this year's NBA draft lottery play out? Who are the prospects to pay attention to going into the 2024 NBA draft? You're going to have us covered for all of that and so much more over at Locked On NBA Big Board. Richard, thanks for stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
Thank you.